Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, awarded RevTech strategist of 2024. In this episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest talks about how she came about to offer the service and the solution that she offers now. Really looking at how she did business and became a top producer using the channel of Slack and offering advice and being authentic and very personable, and realizing that is really her zone of genius, and how she can then leverage that to help other organizations build partnership, grow through partnership, or grow through community. It's a great way of getting referrals, recommendations, but essentially the bottom line is revenue growth. She also talked about EQ and IQ and how this very much leads the way in her execution of what she does. My next guest is founder of The Revenue Table, driving revenue growth through strategic partnerships and trusted relationships. She leads with a rebellious, EQ-led mindset, activating revenue growth initiatives and executing big ideas. She excels in executive communication and leveraging Nearbound approach to meet buyers where they want to engage most. So welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Amelia Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me here. I am so thrilled and honored that y'all reached out for me to be on here. I was like, are you sure you've got the right Amelia Taylor?
I have. I know I have. Now, we met back over 2 years ago in Boston when we were co-authors of the book Heels to Deals. And, you know, I was saying to Amelia, when the first time meeting her, I was just blown away, not only by what she said, but the way her approach to what she does. And I thought, oh my God, this is a really smart cookie here. So, I mean, it's taken 2 years to get you on the podcast. So that was my bad, really. So I'm really happy to have you here. And I really want to kind of like delve into, there's so many areas to talk about with you, but I'd really like to delve into kind of what you do for your clients, because a lot has changed over the last couple of years. So talk to me about leveraging relationships and ecosystems and how you support your clients.
So it has taken me a bit to learn exactly what that means, because it's very easy to say, right? And so I'll pack up a little bit and I'll tell you, I sat my butt down and I said, Amelia, you got to learn who you want to be when you grow up. And so going off on my own, I was like, all right, single mommy of 2, I don't have time to play around with the fact that I just tossed my W-2 and my health insurance out the window and said, let's go and call Rogue a strategy. This is not okay. Time to buckle down. So I did what any grown-up would do, and I acted like a kindergartner. I drew this big V on a sheet of paper. Literally a big V. And I was like, all right, funnel, focus what it is that you do best. Because numerous conversations with people that I trusted that were just kind of in my circle, it was like, okay, what would you say I do? Like, basically solve my problems, you know? And they're like, I can't figure out your life for you. And so I wrote down all these things at the top of this V and then eliminated one thing on each line to get down to what it is that I felt as though I was not just good at, but I could do best. And then I also had a passion for doing. So I knew that those 3 things had to really, embody one another. And the way that I will go and work with clients is I will go first assess what it is that their needs are. So a lot of the times it's like, hey, we want to either figure out how to, one, grow revenue, right? Like that's the name of the game. But we want to do it by way of either partners that we have, or we want to do it through community. And that seems to be the biggest thing that I've heard. And in my sales career, Pavilion specifically, but Slack communities, that's where I've driven the most revenue, which is not normal by any means. It's very unorthodox. But I learned, okay, if someone's got that little green circle right there saying they're online, why am I not approaching them where they're already living and talking and breathing to their peers, where it's a pay to play community? And I can, they're, say they've already asked a question. Sure, let me go and answer that to them. So I'll go in and, do this one-to-one, one-to-many approach by answering them, then sliding over to their DMs and actually having that personal conversation, but showing everyone else in a channel, hey, I can help with this specific problem. So thankfully, a lot of the clients that I have worked with and are working with, they've come word about there. It's been through, hey, we saw you share XYZ in whatever community. So knowing that, it boiled down to, okay, community is where I know how to really thrive. And I know where to go meet buyers. If they're my buyers and I met them through community, I can speak to that. And, never specifically holding a partner title, it was where that was just kind of innate in a sense of, I think everything is selling, right? It is. Everything is sales. And so knowing that you can sell through and by way of partners, if you enable them from top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel, and then helping reps learn the value, either if it's through the partners that you have, or if it's through the sales team that you have who is able to work with partners as well, it's enablement, really. So I've come to terms with this more recent than not, that I'm doing a lot of enablement across the board and leaning in heavily with a ton of EQ being on my side, learning the IQ as I go, but also knowing the difference when to leverage, okay, street smarts versus book smarts. I think that is one of the biggest downfalls of sales right now is that people just, they don't know what they don't know. And everyone is so reactive. And it's like, hold on, let's slow down and let's think about what we're doing before we do it. I've never been good at that in my personal life, but when it comes to my professional life, that is something that I can do well and speak towards because I'm looking at it from a bird's eye view. I'm looking at it from, an outsider perspective, especially with clients. Fresh eyes see different problems. And I think that's so important for especially founders to understand. I'm not coming in to shake up your business. Here's the scope we agreed upon. Like, I'm coming to shake it up in the very best way, not to make you look like anything but a rock star, that you literally are going to thrive. But, a lot of people are stuck in their own way right now. So it is a tough market, like we were saying earlier, and it's been a weird year. It's been a strange year.
It has been. There's lots I want to get into this with you, because I think this is the way that a lot of key people are beginning to leverage their own network and platform by taking a step back and understand what is their zone of genius. And it may not be in the traditional frameworks, because, you're a saleswoman. You've come from a sales background. You can train someone how to sell, you've sold yourself, a sales leader, all of those things. And so it would have been so easy to try and, square peg round hole, which is often the case, and go into that and just, oh, I'm not really happy here. But actually creating it for yourself. And then what you're creating is actually what people need. They may not know they want it, but they certainly need it, because we were just talking about LinkedIn and building, community and building your reach. And you're kind of doing it without doing it consciously. You're very much being yourself and authentic, and people are attracted to you. And you're very much helping people by answering their questions, and that helps them, and then they want to do more for you. So I think it's quite interesting, this niche that you found. So you've got all of the sales background, your stuff,
Right.
but actually finding, this is all sales, you've said, but actually it's almost the new phase of sales, which is revenue growth through community and partnership.
Exactly. And it's looking at things And everything in life, I feel as though, even when I was a little girl, everything I looked at was like, okay, well, those are the rules listed by the pool, right? You can't do this, this, this. What if I just challenge it a little bit? So that's my way, my cop out of saying that I break rules, because I do. But I will look at things and I will challenge them. So I'll look at how someone's doing something and I think, but is that the only way? And so in different companies that I've been a part of, I'm I haven't ever had that ego in the way to make it seem as though I can't go and talk to leadership about what I'm seeing. Because naturally, by being a networker, and that's just really, who I am through and through. And I talk and want to get to know people at a personal level too. Because at the end of the day, no one's their title. They've had their accomplishments, but they're not their title. And so knowing who people are, that's how people are going to stick with you and remain your buyers or your customers or your advocates or your external evangelists and referral partners and so on. And so being able to do that at different companies, it was where I learned a lot about how people really operate on this, like almost like human psychology level of how in the world do you talk to people best at this executive level, or how do you go and approach a rep who's really struggling. And so learning that, it's where, yes, everybody can say sales is helping. If you show up to help, then you're selling, and vice versa. It's like, sure, but let's use all the buzzwords and let's nix them as well of like authentic and genuine, because we all know salespeople can BS with the best of them, right? That they really know how. And so knowing who you're working with matters so, so much. And the reputation that you build for yourself, which I subconsciously was doing, I suppose, really, like we were saying, I didn't mean to start having people follow me on LinkedIn, which I laugh at sometimes because I say some of the most outlandish, ridiculous things that I make myself laugh at. And I'm like, who says that? Like, what am I doing? But it's not the same by my playbook, follow this, follow that. But it's also saying, hey, here's a way to think of things in maybe an unorthodox manner, or a way that maybe you're not being taught because this isn't taught normally, as in how to drive revenue through Slack communities per se.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned EQ and IQ kind of really leading your execution. So can you talk more about that? I know what it is, but how you use it and why it's so kind of fundamental to many of the strategies that you use.
So I will say, so my first sales gig, I'm at an outsource SDR shop, and it's in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's called Inside Out, and I'm I jump in. I didn't know for 5 months what SDR meant, and I was like, it's too late to ask anyone. I can't go. And so they said, Amelia, we're kind of vetting somebody for a role. Can you talk to them? And this person asked me, hey, can I ask you something? What's the difference between an SDR and a BDR? And I was like, okay, here we go, game time. And I was like, well, I think they're probably the same. And she was like, do you know what they mean? And I was like, mm-mm. And she goes, but you're the leader on the leaderboard. And I was like, I have. But then she goes, that's interesting. She was like, so you don't live by your title? And I was like, absolutely not. And she goes, it's sales development representative and business development. And I was like, thank you so much. And she's a friend of mine to this day. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I embraced the fact that that was not going to be, I wasn't going to live by my title. I just needed to learn how to execute based off of what it was that was in front of me, because I found myself in a position, this me being totally, transparent too, of there, being a newly divorced single mother and being like, hey, where do you go make money? Because it's a roof or a bridge over me and my kids' heads. What do I do? And had friends that like, you jump into software sales. I'm like, what is software? I don't understand any of that. And so I jumped into the company, and it was the T-Mobile for business or enterprise. And so I put a cap on everyone's quota that was uncapped month one, because I just learned how to talk to people and ask for feedback, and realizing, the piece of sales, they like to talk about themselves a lot. So what if I ask them, if I don't get this meeting, what if I say, hey, if I were on your team, what can I do that possibly would have changed the outcome of how this call went? Like, I would love your feedback. And they would love to give me their feedback, was the best part, because they wanted to be like, oh, well, this is what you did wrong. And I would say, can I ask you one question? Can I try one more time? And they would say, all right, what you got? And if I literally verbatim just went with what they said and said their name too, which matters, it was leading by not knowing. So that emotional intelligence of reading the room or who was on the other side of the phone by either their tonality or the way that they, if it's somebody in Boston, they're like, go, 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 like, hey, get to the point, you Southern girl, you like, keep talking, like you're talking about too much. All right, I'm going to hurry it up and I'm going to be quick and I'm going to match their tone. And then knowing when I was selling RevOps services, so fast forward a few years later, I'm thinking, all right, these people, some of these real technical people, they don't speak Amelia. Amelia doesn't, I don't speak them, and learning who to grab, who can join calls with me, who would speak that technical language with them, but I could have that sales acumen and the understanding of what it was that their needs were to really build out a scope. It was matchmaking, if you will, of like, okay, how do you put these puzzle pieces together? How do you put the right people in the right room to drive impact in the very best way? And I
So
think
how
that's,
do you use that now? So this is how you kind of learn all of those things. So how are you utilizing that now to kind of leverage for your clients?
I think it's teaching that. So I'm teaching a lot of the sales side of the business that it's okay to lean on the EQ side when it comes to even what they're creating. So AI is disruptive and it's showing up and so on and so forth. And people don't know how to train on it. And that's just what it is. And so I can go in and say, hey, here's tactics you can use where you can go and get more revenue with less of that push for mass, blasting every single person with X amount of emails and whatnot. Here's a way to actually go and be personable with people. And then how do you read a room? So without having this psychology kind of degree or anything, it's me just leaning into that. I'm really trying to understand it and being able to show people by the success that I've had by doing that. Here's what you can go and do today, because people, they don't need sales right now. Buyers don't need sales. They don't need the sales team to go through in order to get a demo, in order to go and buy. They have all the answers at hand, right? So for sellers to really stand out right now, it's an EQ game. It's the EQ and understanding where technology's at and being able to speak your buyer's language and really understand, here's how I can help you. And also, if you can't, you go leverage your network of who you tag someone in who can help that person best. And that's just showing that you're there to genuinely do a good job and like be the person that they can say, hey, this, and that's how referrals can happen, right? And there's the recommendations and ultimately the revenue, but the relationships at the very forefront have to be led by EQ, because you can tell if someone cares or not, right? Like talking to them, you can tell if someone's like, looking away or they don't care, and or whatever they're doing. And it's like, okay, be engaging, be curious too. Like EQ has to be matched with that curiosity driver of understanding people, because not everyone's going to open up to everyone about like, here's my problems, like sell me, right? So leaning into the EQ side of things by way of the curiosity and the questions that you're asking is such a missed training aspect for so many sales reps.
Yeah, that's interesting. You would think that, okay, well, they know that, they've got that, but clearly that isn't the case. Where do you think AI may be misdirecting people in terms of being less EQ or less humanistic, less kind of personality driven? Where do you think there may be a disconnect with the embracing AI in sales?
So I think the disconnect is when OpenAI opened their floodgates, right? And GPT was available to everyone. And I believe this was November 2022, because I was working with the AI company. So that's why I remember that. I don't have this crazy memory. So people were so reactive, and they're like, we need to get this tool, this tool, this tool, this tool. And so I set up my keywords within different Slack communities. And so every time someone would ask a specific question about what their problems were with what they were trying to solve for, hey, where does our AI, collateral we're creating, does it live with sales marketing? How do we both have access to this? What do we do? Are there different models? Are there things? I'm just trying to understand it, but just jumping into it too, by way of, this is what we're supposed to do, right? Question mark, trying to figure it out. So I set up my keywords, and then I got all these different people, and I did this a few times, about 3 times. About after a week of seeing all these people asking these questions, I got them all in the same little chat together in Slack. And I'm like, you all are asking the same things. And one of the founders of the company that I was with, he is brilliant. One of the first engineers at Facebook kind of guys, doesn't like that he can't code anymore because he loved doing that sort of thing. And so I asked him, I said, Sirnoff, would you be open to helping these people just understand AI in sales right now? Because people are just trying to figure it out. And he was like, absolutely. There's not a mention of the company or anything. It was like, hey, here's where AI was. Here's where it's at. Here's where it's going. What questions do you have? How can I help you? And it was like, that's how I have learned. And little things like that, where I've learned, okay, the disconnect is that people don't know what they don't know, because AI is so advanced. It's so advanced. Technology is way more advanced than I think that any of us really understand, and can really wrap our heads around right now. So knowing that we don't know what we don't know, and then also sales leadership has got, it can't just be like, from the very top, let's delegate down. You've got to take care of your people, which I can go on a whole tangent about this, but I won't do it. I will spare everyone from this one because I will get fired up. But sales leadership, knowing the people who are leading these sellers, if they can't speak to what it is, as to how, like, the tools that are at hand for reps to be able to leverage and use, or if they're letting them go free, mass blast everyone, organizations have to understand that's ruining not just an individual's brand, it's ruining a company brand. I mean, it's absolutely ruining any company brand when you see, this rep just did this. Oh, another one did it from the same company, the same exact thing. Or this makes no sense. I haven't been at that company for 2 years. So leadership, and I think there's got to, I mean, it is the whole GTM, right? Like, come together, right? All of this, GTM Partners is doing great with this Better Together initiative that they have, really driving across the board the understanding of how to adopt in today's technology landscape too, of how does RevOps play into this, and the importance of having RevOps internally being able to speak to sales leaders. How do you have that communication? But here's what's kind of crazy. So I learned this recently. So there are 5 different generations in the workforce today, which is wild. So knowing that alone, that means that there's, Gen Z, that they are looking at their work as their hobby, which was a study. And there's, millennials saying like, no, we can go still, and we can go fix the whole entire world. It's going to be great. Like, we can do anything we put our minds to. And then there's the baby boomers who are saying like, no, I work to live. Like, I am working hard and I'm creating a life that I'm going to be proud of, because my family relies on me. And so all of these, it was crazy looking at that. But I was thinking when I was hearing this, how in the world is communication supposed to be had when there are 5 generations in a typical workforce right now, over 200 people? How can they communicate best when they don't speak each other's language to begin with? Then there's a whole new language, and there's different, AI coming into this space. It's got to be intimidating to some degree, which is why I find outsourcing and grabbing people externally to come in who are experts at what they do to be such a huge miss for some companies right now, that they're not leveraging. Like, go find the people who know what they're doing to help your people internally, you're saving on overhead and you're saving time and you're saving on the, initiatives that you're trying to streamline to get to where you want to go.
And I think it's understanding that not all salespeople or all people, they're so uniquely different. Well, not only generational, but just in their personality, how they receive information. There's so many ways that we learn, the learning style, the communication style. And I think so often organizations, they communicate, or everything they do in their it's like one size fits all, whereas actually they're all so uniquely different as individuals. So I really love that aspect that you're talking about. I'm afraid we've kind of run out of time, so I'm going to have to kind of like wrap this up with a question of what's one tried and tested strategy you would offer listeners and how to scale their sales.
So I've mentioned it a few times, and I will live and die by this one. And I'm happy to share too with you this post that I did and this whole thing that I kind of put together of 6 different. I'm sitting in the carpool line dropping my 2 daughters off. Someone asked me how to set up keywords in Slack, and knowing that's where I've driven the most revenue in my career, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sitting there, the cars aren't moving. I'm like, here's to, do a good post real quick. Here's 6 different ways to leverage Slack as your next revenue driver going into this. It was end of 2023. So I did this post, had crazy traction, and I'm like, what in the world? Do people not know this? So I learned, okay, if you go, this is my, takeaway for everyone, go and set up your keywords in Slack, go into your preferences and what it is that you help with. So whatever communities you're a part of, go and set that up, and you're going to get notified every time. So you're going to look as like that expert going in, and go and comment on where it is in the thread where they're saying, if they're looking for help for something, hey, I think I can help you out with this. I'll shoot you a DM. That's a one-to-many approach because more people in that channel will see. Then go DM them right then, verbatim repeat what it is that they said, use their name. And also, I'm a big fan of this for the sake of simplicity. Here's my calendar link if it makes sense for us to chat. I say that because if you're already communicating in a casual, more, form, be yourself. If it's not you to do that, don't do it. Be you, show up and be you the way that you present yourself. Don't pretend to be someone you're not.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. So who is your hero or shero?
Oh, this one is a precious one to me. Absolutely my mother, through and through. So my mother passed when I was almost 15. She had breast cancer, and I can say I never saw that woman hurt. I never saw her make an excuse. I never saw where she let me and my sister down in any way, shape, or form. And we put a lot of people on a pedestal after they pass, right? And it's very interesting how we do that. But I have precious memories, and I also have memories of things that I don't want to, that I've gone through and I've dealt with because I've had to learn how to be a mother with, not having my mother physically present, which in turn is really something to be grateful for in some way of the being a present figure in my children's lives. That's going to make them understand that, hey, I'm heard, I'm seen, and I can do big things, and my ideas aren't crazy. They are. My children are totally off. They're my kids, obviously. They're a little crazy, but they, being intentionally present with them is one of my absolute goals in life. But it also comes a little bit subconscious too, because I learned the absence of not having that presence with my mother, and knowing that, it's like, wow, that was a pillar in my life of learning how to do things on my own. And my girls are going to learn how to do things on their own, but they're going to know that, hey, my mom saw me and she heard me and she gave me that encouragement that I needed and that foundation, which is so important to be able to stand on. So my mama all day through and through. Absolutely.
Wow, that is a very impactful story, and I can feel it, not only just hear it as well. And like having that missing that presence of your mother, what's the most important things, because they're the things that you miss, and they're the things that you now know you can give, which is incredible. Thank you very much for sharing that. And your girls probably realize how crazy you are, but it's authentically you.
100% do. They do, and they're like, they'll tell their girlfriends, "Mama's crazy. My mama's crazy, but she's fun, and she
Yeah,
loves it, and they know." And you know what? I'm gonna
exactly.
go be myself through and through wherever I go, and that's like the biggest thing. Just I hope everyone does the same. Like, embrace who it is that you are and your strengths, and go and write a big V on a sheet of paper and funnel focus down to what you're really good at, because it might be a kindergarten thing to do, but we got to go back to the basics. I think
Yeah.
that is really where we are as a whole in this whole, whether it's SaaS, B2B, whatever it is in this world, get back to the basics. Go back to that foundation you have.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Amelia, for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Thank you. I absolutely enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.